In April 1882, Jesse James stood to straighten a picture frame. A moment later, a gang member shot him in the back of the head. This is the centerpiece of the myth, the moment the noble American outlaw was betrayed. Popular folklore has spent over a century insisting James was a Robin Hood figure, stealing from the rich to help the poor. But the historical record tells a different story. This portrait of a young Jesse James shows a man forged in the most savage, bloodthirsty theater of the American Civil War. James began his career as a Confederate bushwhacker in Missouri, training under the psychopathic William Bloody Bill Anderson. He didn't fight in traditional battles. He participated in the slaughter of unarmed Union soldiers and neighbors on their own doorsteps. This photograph of the James Younger gang captures the grim reality of his post-war years. James was a ruthless thief who robbed banks, stagecoaches, and trains for personal gain, targeting anyone in his path, regardless of their wealth or political leanings. Despite a career defined by murder and theft, the legend of the noble defender persists. There is a massive disconnect here. If the history doesn't support the hero, we have to look for who built the story. The man who bridged that gap was John Newman Edwards, a Confederate sympathizer and newspaper editor who saw James as a political opportunity. Post-war Missouri was defined by regional grievance and deep resentment toward federal authority. Edwards needed a symbol to rally Southern Democrats against the Union's Reconstruction efforts. Edwards launched a campaign to rewrite James's crimes. Through hyperbolic editorials, he framed the outlaw as a victim of Northern aggression and circulated the baseless claim that he robbed the rich to give to the poor. By wrapping a murderer in the language of chivalry and regional pride, Edwards converted a local criminal into a potent political weapon, showing how a targeted media campaign can effectively overwrite historical record. Even James's death became part of the machinery. His assassin, Robert Ford, wasn't just chasing a reward. He was driven by intense envy of Jesse's fame. This was mimetic desire. Ford wanted to inhabit James's symbolic position. He believed that by killing the legend, he would inherit the public's fascination and authority. After the shooting, Ford toured a stage show where he reenacted the murder for paying audiences night after night. He expected to be seen as a hero, but the public turned on him, branding him a coward for the very act he expected would bring him glory. These reenactments showed that the living man had been eclipsed. Jesse James was no longer a person. He was a script, a narrative commodity that anyone with a stage could use for their own ends. By the 1930s, the myth needed another update. The pro-Confederate origins of the James legend were a liability for studios trying to market to a unified national audience. The 1939 film Jesse James remodeled the story again, this time focusing on the anxieties of the Great Depression. The filmmakers shifted the villain. In this reward poster, the threat isn't the government, it's signed by the railroad. By making corporate greed the enemy, Hollywood gave the public a hero they could cheer for during a time of economic collapse. This remodeling successfully nationalized the myth. It detached Jesse James from his Confederate roots, presenting a version of the outlaw that a national audience could embrace as a champion of the common American farmer. In 2007, Andrew Dominik's The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford took a different approach, stripping the legend down to its barest components. Scholars view this film through a post-Western theoretical lens. It's a genre that examines what happens when a heroic myth is structurally exhausted and can no longer offer moral or narrative clarity. Dominik portrays James as a fatigued figure, a man acting out a role he can no longer sustain. He becomes a necropolitical target, a figure whose death is managed, authorized, and circulated as a public transaction rather than a meaningful end. Jesse James is a case study in how American myths are built and rebuilt. The legend survives after 140 years because it is hollow. It is an empty vessel that every generation fills with their own political fears, their own corporate anxieties, and profound cultural disillusionment.